You're listening to the Bearded Theologians podcast, hosted by Zach Bechtold and Matt Franks. We hope you enjoyed today's podcast and check us out online at beardedtheologians.com. You're listening to the Bearded Theologians podcast, hosted by Matt Franks
and Zach Bechtold. And today we are going to talk about a quote that's a Mike Slaughter quote, right, Matt?
Yeah.
That the disciples make disciples. And so we're going to break that down a little bit about what it means to us. And we hope at the end of this, you all share with us on the social medias. So Matt, to you, what does disciples make disciples mean?
Well, it's interesting. And in Mike's book, Change the World, there's a little line above that says disciples replicate themselves. And we all claim it as followers of Jesus Christ that we are disciples of Jesus Christ, and we are all trying to replicate ourselves to be like Jesus. And our goal and our task in our church is if you look at the United Methodist mission statement, is to make disciples for the transformation of the world. The local church provides the most significant arena to do that. And if a church is being a church, we are making disciples. We're not attending programs. We're not just sucking the life out of the church just by showing up. We're actually going out into our communities, into our world, and showing people what our faith drives us to do, whether it's to serve on the Boys and Girls Club board or to serve on the whatever board we're asked to serve on nonprofit-wise, but to be the church, not just in church on Sunday morning where we are supposed to be re-energized and refueled to go back out into the mission field to make disciples. Making disciples is about building relationships with one another and sharing people why this faith has driven me, why this faith, and walk with people. Because it's a lifelong process. It's not something that just happens and that's it. You're not just a disciple and that's it. It's kind of like in certain clubs, once you join the club, you're in, that's it. You don't have to do anything. A disciple is moving in a lifelong journey towards growing more like Christ. And so, Zach, as you think about that, what kind of percolates in you?
A whole bunch. But
gas.
It is gas. It is. No, you're right. Discipleship's not just limited to the church. We watch Jesus by his example. As he sat down and he called the disciples, they didn't just stay in their little group of 12 and 13. They went out. For the time that they followed Jesus, wherever that was and whenever that was, there were times that they left and went out and gathered more people, and they left and went out and gathered more people. There's times that they went off with just a handful of them with Jesus. And then they all went out. I think the key thing that we miss about discipleship is we think it's just Sunday mornings, or that it's that Bible study, or it's that small group, or it's that podcast, not this one, but others. It's those things. We forget that discipleship, it's fostered inside the church and with our personal relationships with Christ, but it's fostered so much with people and in community. And, I think too often we forget, at least as Methodists, we forget that part of to make disciples of Jesus Christ for the transformation of the world. I think we forget to go and transform the world. I think we allow ourselves to be a little too inward focused. And when we do that, disciples, when we become too inward focused on that, we're not making disciples at that point. We're focused solely on ourselves. And so for disciples to make disciples, we have to leave. We have to leave the church. We have to be in our community, whether it's the Lions Club or the Boys and Girls Club, or simply just having lunch with your coworkers or whomever. I don't know what your context is. Whatever that looks like for you in your context, be with people. And maybe not just people that make you comfortable. If Jesus was any example that we want to follow, he certainly hung out and ate with and was with people that made a whole bunch of people uncomfortable. And to me, that's where discipleship starts, is that being uncomfortable.
And I think that's why churches need to have a discipleship strategy to understand, as Slaughter put, to address the how, why, and in what a person is expected to be involved in. And, I hope and pray that your church has some kind of discipleship strategy to to be able to nurture people, to be able to reach out to people, to be able to say, hey, here's who we are, here's what we do, and we do it well.
Mm-hmm.
And I think far too often we think of discipleship as programming, and we think of it,
Mm-hmm.
if we offer all these crazy programs, people are going to come to the church. And I don't think that that's the case. I think that if we say, this is who we are, and this is how we believe we make disciples of Jesus Christ for the transformation of the world, and this is how we do it, and if you strive to do it very well, if you work towards an excellence of doing it well, it carries you out into the world knowing that you know what you're doing. At least you know what the call is. You don't know what you're doing and how to do it, and that's very biblical in its own right. But
Mm-hmm.
to really make disciples means, one, we have to understand what we're being a disciple of. And then two, really be open and led by the Spirit to be pushed out of our normal norms. Because when you read the Gospels, I don't read the Gospels where Jesus sends them back into their own little communities and they feel comfortable and everything's taken care of. When I look at the Gospels and they're sent out, even when he was with them, they didn't succeed. And so Jesus had to show them how to do it right. And I think that's kind of the purpose for Sunday morning. It's saying, hey, we recognize you fall short of the grace that living in your lives, and we need you to be re-energized and refocused to go back out into the world, because it's a vicious world out there. And making disciples is and this is the thing I really like to emphasize, is a lifelong process, and it's a communal process where everybody has to be involved in it, and you can't just have these little pockets of discipleship. It's something that everybody does as a community.
No, that's exactly right. And, we've talked about how in the past we had the church, and as pastors and as leaders, we've put discipleship in the corner and made it silo. We've made it programs, we've made it this and that, we've made it the next big book study, and it's not that. Those things are tools and resources to help discipleship. And discipleship is, I would say, an action, a way that we live out this calling and understand this calling that we have of Christ. And that takes both individual relationship with Christ and community. We have to test that in both places. We have to flesh that out in both places. And God, Jesus didn't do it alone, and he's Jesus. And I think we get so stuck in that idea that it is a journey, that it's a prayer, that it's, this one-time feeling. But I would argue, as good Methodist, we believe very much that this is a lifelong process, that we're moving on towards perfection, and there are going to be good days and there are going to be bad days, but that's part of being disciples. Jesus was run out of plenty of towns, including his hometown. The disciples weren't always welcome, and yet they hung in there. They kept going, they kept following, and kept spreading, the love and grace of Christ. But, you said something that was interesting, I guess. Well, not I guess, it was interesting, that I think we often don't understand what it means to be a disciple of Jesus. I think we often look at that and feel like it's going to be sunshines and rainbows and unicorns. And it's not. It's hard. And I think if it was going to be easy, I don't know that necessarily Jesus would have called us to follow him if it was going to be easy.
Well, and I think that's the deal, is that I feel the church has sold us short on discipleship.
Mm-hmm.
We're not telling people what the cost really is. And we've made it into this own personal individualism kind of deal. And I have a hard time thinking that it's more than that. It's actually about community. Mm-hmm. And it's actually about sharing experience and growth with one another, and sharing, being able to speak truth when need to, and being honest and open, and having conversation that the world doesn't want us to have, especially now. I look at this individualized world that we live in, mm-hmm. and it speaks against the gospel, in my opinion, because we call it the gospel of individualism, says it's all about you.
Mhm.
And the gospel of Jesus Christ says it's all about us, and we're in this together, and
That's
we're,
right.
we want to grow closer to God together. And it's not about a feeling or a gas or whatever it is you've got going on. It's about making a lifelong commitment of wrestling and pushing yourself closer to try to grow to God. And I think that's why Wesley himself struggled with that so much, is
Yeah.
because he understood that discipleship was more than just saying yes.
Mhm.
It was being a doer of the word and not
Mhm.
just a hearer of the word. A hearer of the word is important.
Mhm.
I think that's kind of the first step. But until you become a doer of the word, you can never fully grasp what it means to be a disciple of Jesus Christ. And some people get that, and some
Mhm.
people make that that understanding, and are just awesome at living out their faith. And some people um, make it so individualized that when it becomes a sticky situation and it doesn't make them feel good, that it's a lack of faith. And it's about them. It's not about a relationship with God in a way that God calls us to be. And so like it's such a challenge. And I hope that, like, I have this feeling that we're going to push more on being a radical disciple and actually being faithful.
Mhm.
And that's going to mean some difficult things for the church. That means, some things will go away that have maybe been around for a while, and maybe they're not fruitful anymore.
Right.
But some things, you know, we got to remember that things are never meant to be forever.
Right.
The only thing that lasts forever is God's love.
Right.
And um,
And that was something that Jesus spoke to about being fruitful. That if there are limbs that need to be cut, and we got to cut those because we'll bear more fruit when we do. And sometimes those are painful limbs to cut. Those are painful fruits that just aren't bearing fruit anymore like they were, and they're taking up time and resources for other things that could be as fruitful or more. So I have a question. Have we made, and when I say we, I mean the church in the last, I don't know, our lifetime. Let's take that just as our context. If not, no, just the last 10 years, have we made discipleship a lifestyle instead of a way of life? Does that make sense?
I kind of see what you're saying.
Have we made it something that we can pin on Pinterest or put on Facebook or Instagram instead of actually living it out?
Yes and no.
Okay.
I think yes, in a way that we say, okay, and I'll pick on myself, and I'll pick on communications a little bit. The see all the people thing.
Mm-hmm.
I love it. It's a great thing.
Yeah, it's
Awesome.
great.
My concern is are we seeing all the people, and how does that
Right.
look to you? And that's different for everybody in their own context. But it's like, if we're gonna say it, we better be doing it. I mean, and that's kind of how I feel about it. Is that
Right.
and that's why it's one of the reasons why I love the United Methodist Mission Statement, is
Mm-hmm.
because that last part, it's funny to hear how many people don't say that last part, when that last part is the most important part of that whole stinking statement.
That's right.
And if we're going to make disciples of Jesus Christ for the world, by God, we got to have somewhere to do it.
That's right.
And the church can provide the most significant arena for discipleship making occur. But realize this, the church isn't just a building. The church is when we go outside of the world and we share and we serve and we love outside of Sunday morning worship,
That's right.
outside of Sunday morning Bible study or whatever it is you attend. And so I think what we need to do as a church is, one, have a clear understanding of who we are and what we do and why we do it. And if we can answer those things, I don't see how the church cannot be successful.
Right.
And that's different in every context. Not every church can be Adam Hamilton, but every church can be the church that God has called them to be in that particular time, in that particular place, in that particular area, to provide the good news of Jesus Christ for the world.
That's right.
And if you understand that, and you have a community that works towards a shared vision of this is what God has called us to do here, then live it out, and live it out not just Sunday morning, but in every step and every breath that you take. And I think that that's kind of that, to me, that's it. If we can do that, we'll get the disciples making disciples. And we won't just be about, well, have, that personal individual salvation that the world has kind of tilted Christianity a little bit towards, in my opinion. And I would love to see more disciples, people that are willing to give their lives or change their life to live out the faith that God has called them to versus just going through the motions.
Right. We've talked outside of the podcast about the see all the people thing, and I'm with you. I love it. It's one of the things that I love about the Methodist Church is we have these social principles that truly call us to see all the people. We don't always live into them, and that's something we all have to get better at. And it's going outside of the church. It's leaving the building and being people. Being the church, and being with people and truly seeing people. If you take that, the commercial they did that goes with see all the people, my favorite thing about it is it's such, I don't know if they did it intentionally. Communications, if you're listening, chime in. We know you're out there. But they go in to this meeting and talk about the church, and at the end of it they come out and be the church. To me, that's a commentary on the church as we go inside and we're talking business. We're not really doing anything. We're just sitting in meetings. We're doing what we have to do, and yet the church is outside. The church is outside playing basketball. The church is outside, sleeping in cardboard boxes. The church is outside living life while we're inside wasting time for whatever reason, talking about God knows what. And but I thought that was beautiful that I don't know beautiful is the right thing. I thought that was a perfect commentary on the church of how it sits. We go inside the church, we talk about the church, and those people could have very well walked outside and ignored everything that was going on. And yet, the whole point of it, see all the people, they came outside and were the church. Meetings, business, those are stuff that we have to do. We just can't forget that that's not it, that's not everything that the church is.
Right. And I think that's why it's important that we push our congregations and to push like this podcast to people asking the question of, not only how is it with your soul, that personal piety is important, but your social piety is just as important. How are you living out your faith where people can tell that you're a follower of Jesus Christ, and not one of those crazy ones that condemns everybody, because that's not the gospel.
That's right. That's right.
And that if we share love, the reward is so great that we can't measure it. And, as I've been thinking about this, I've been doing these listening posts. I'm in my new appointment now, and I'm doing these listening posts. And what's been amazing, after 6 listening posts, we are all saying the same thing. And so now my response has been, let's go do this.
Let's
knock this out. And you need someone to be that person to say, hey, we can do this, or let's go do this. And it needs to be people who aren't afraid to go and try. And if you fail, that's okay. You dust yourself off, you learn how to pray a different way, and you do a different thing. That's what happened to the disciples. And I think far too often, we've talked about this several times, is that the church needs not to be afraid to take risk anymore.
That's right.
And I think it's shifting back that way.
I think so.
And I hope so. Maybe I'm a little bit hopeful for that. And as we think about disciples making disciples, I want to challenge our listeners to think about what it means for you to be a disciple of Jesus Christ for the transformation of the world. What does it take for you? How do you live out your faith? I think that matters. And how we share that. One, how we share it can inspire others.
That's right.
I joked when I was in the emergency room a few weeks ago. I invited both my nurses to church on Sunday morning. Just, hey, if you don't have a church home, we'd be glad to take you in. and finding those conversations and building those relationships to say, hey, we'd love for you to come be a part of our community. And then allowing them to be part of your community. Don't just treat them as visitors or guests, but treat them as family and invite them to the table. And I mean, there's so much you can do that. And so we want to encourage you to live out your faith and help make disciples of Jesus Christ for the transformational world. Because if we can agree to do that together, seeing all the people will be the easiest thing that we can do to then make a difference for the kingdom. And, I think that's what we're about here at Bearded Theologians, is we're trying to expand the kingdom in a different way and having conversations like this in an open way. And we've really appreciated our guests. I mean, we went like a whole month having these awesome guests. I want to encourage to go and listen to all of them are awesome. Like I don't have a favorite one out of all of those. I mean, I even went back a few weeks ago and listened to Bishop Harvey when she was talking about Israel. I'm like, I want to go. Like, I know. And then we've had all these other good posts that we've had up, and we want to encourage you to take a look at those. And we're still kind of in that transition period, both Zach and I. And so as we figure this journey out together as Bearded Theologians, we want to invite you in and share our mugs and our t-shirts and our trucker hats and our stickers. And, we want to encourage you to continue to be part of our conversation here at Bearded Theologians. And there's many ways that you can do that. We hope that you've enjoyed listening today. And for that, I'm Matt Franks.
And I'm Zach Bechtold. Thanks for checking us out.
Thank you for listening to the Bearded Theologians podcast. We hope you've enjoyed listening, and we hope that you share our content online through Facebook and social media. And we hope that you check out our Beardcast store at beardedtheologians.com and pick up some great Bearded Theologians gear. We hope you have a good day.